Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities. And it's going to be really an amazing experience. And I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken Stearns, and another beautiful day here out traveling with me in the jar. You saw the little commercial there. That was a voiceover I did almost, 2 years ago when I was planning the trip and trying to imagine what I would discover in traveling across the country, going to 111 cities, meeting 400 people, hearing their stories. Did not expect the mental health as being the thread. But that was the common thread across the first 250 interviews or so. So I started this show, started the JAR Foundation, again, to see what I could do in my little part and kind of tackling the mental health crisis. And part of that journey is understanding it and getting a better idea on what the crisis looks like, what the shape is, and then also just trying to see what kind of treatments are out there and how are we, how do you get in and how do you find help? What does that look like? And what changes are happening in the industry to meet the demand? Because it's incredible crisis unfolding, and it's been unfolding for quite some time. And I think it's really interesting. So, one bright spot is a lot of young professionals getting into the space and kind of putting a much better package around mental health and making it something that's more attractive and feels more comfortable kind of finding. And Susan Mueller today is our guest, and I think it's really interesting what you guys are doing, Susan. I like the whole approach. It's not just sit down and talk anymore. I think a lot of us on the outside see mental health and psychiatry services and everything is really a place where you go and you sit down and talk on a couch. And I think Relief Mental Health, what you're doing is really, really well put together. And I want to hear, hope the audience wants to enjoy a little bit more information around it. So Susan, welcome to the show. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll start diving into what you're doing over at Relief.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be part of what you're doing. I think what you're doing is really cool. And we need more people like you that are out there just talking to everybody and finding out what their human experience is. So it's very, very cool. I'm Susan Mueller. I am the CEO of Relief Mental Health. And, outside of my job, I'm also a mother of 4 children and a wife and a dog owner. So I got stuff, right? I started Relief Mental Health in January of 2020. So really good time to start the business, right? There had been this sort of, I had worked in the healthcare field for a long time, and there was something about mental health that always drew me to it. I had grown up with a family that had some family members that had some mental health issues, pretty severe one with someone that my parents took on as a foster child, as a child, and, really just wanted to understand more about the mental health world. And every time I was exposed to it, it continued to just be very interesting to me. There's so many people that don't understand how to navigate the mental health space. And when I had an opportunity to look at TMS, which is how we started our company, transcranial magnetic stimulation. I thought this is just such a cool treatment, and it's so different than what other people are doing. So the idea was just to do TMS here. That was all we planned on doing, and we opened.
Really interesting.
That was it. That was the plan, and because it was a treatment that was so different, that didn't have, we didn't have to use medication. It wasn't just sitting down and talking. It was something that embodied a lot of parts of mental health that I really enjoyed. people that had treatment-resistant depression,
Mm-hmm.
people that had tried medications and failed and that just were sick and tired of the same old thing. That was really the goal, was to do TMS. And I planned on opening a couple of facilities, and that would be it. So we opened our first one in Oak Brook, Illinois in January of 2020. And of course, 6 weeks after we took our first patient, we had this worldwide crisis on our hands.
That's so wild. The timing is crazy.
The timing was crazy. It wasn't intentional, right? And during that time frame, all of the traditional mental health services that were available were shutting down. People were going into treatment. They were going into residential facilities or partial hospitalization programs or intensive outpatient, and they were going virtual. That was, and so the human connection was sort of lost, right? And they were looking for something different. They needed a human connection still. So people were looking to do, what can I do that actually is in person and I can interact with a human being? And in that time frame, we saw a lot of people in person, and we saw this need for more and more. We opened a couple more clinics, and we would find that mental health was a crisis. It was an absolute crisis. It got to this point where everyone was looking for services and there was nothing available. Therapists were on wait lists of 3 months. They didn't take insurance anymore. There was just this need that was so large, and we couldn't keep up. So, everything that we've done has been navigated through the eye of the patient. Nobody could find therapists. So, we brought a few therapists in. And then our chief medical officer, Dr. Teresa Poprowski, found this. She was doing a lot of research on what the combination of TMS and ketamine could be. So we tried to send our patients out for ketamine, but nobody called us back. Nobody could get in. So we decided to take that on ourselves, and then started to do Spravato, which is the intranasal ketamine. The FDA approved, covered by insurance, all of that. And we brought that into the clinics out of need, because patients were needing more at times than just TMS, or maybe they didn't qualify for TMS, or, or maybe they needed both. The combination of the two is about 90% effective. So, someone with suicidal ideation, someone with severe treatment-resistant depression, they're going to need several modalities, and that was where Spravato came in. And then it evolved into, well, we need to bring in mental health practitioners that can continue people on their medications. So,
to prescribe, to do some post-treatment prescription.
So it just sort of evolved out of what the patients needed. Everything was organic. And we continue to do that today, where we look at what's out there and what are the challenges with mental health, and how are they able to navigate it? How are they able to find care? What do they continue to need that isn't offered? And it's been very, looking at innovation, what's new in the field, and making it accessible for patients, because that's one of the biggest issues with mental health, is the accessibility. So that's really what we've been trying to do throughout this, 3.5 years that we've been open. We're at 10 clinics in 3 states.
I was just going to ask you. So you started with 1, and then you have 10 already?
We have 10. Yeah. And
are you opening these up organically, or are you kind of doing a little bit of a partner acquisition thing and opening up?
It's all been organic. Everything has been organic, just kind of looking at areas that don't have the services that we offer. And you're really just making these things accessible for people that may not have that accessibility, putting them in areas that there aren't a lot of, treatment deserts, right? Like you're in New Mexico in a desert right now, but there's this treatment desert of mental health.
I would imagine New Mexico's, very underwater on number of therapists and number of clinics versus population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everything that we've done, we started in the Chicagoland area and kind of kept in the Chicagoland area for the first maybe year. We expanded to New Jersey out of just like knowing that there was a need for it out there and having some mental health professionals that we knew and worked with in that area. And then we expanded into Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee area, because there wasn't really anything like what we do. But, one of the things about mental health is it also doesn't wait. So in working in mental health, now and before, when I had worked in mental health for several years, there was always this air of like, yeah, we can get you in. We'll see you in 3 weeks. I mean, if you were having a heart attack, they're going to get you into the ER, right?
Oh, my goodness.
In a mental health crisis and they tell you they can see you in 3 weeks.
There's hope.
Right. Like how
that's hope.
That's insane. So, I mean, it was my goal to figure out a way to get people in right away.
Yeah.
Within a week. But I think that's a huge challenge. It's not only knowing how to navigate it, but it's also how to get into something quickly and how to make sure that patients are getting what they need. I mean, and imagine you're having suicidal ideations and you go to the emergency room and they send you home.
I've just now, the conversations, a lot of things unfold for me as I'm interviewing people. And one was talking to somebody about trying to get mental health professionals into the emergency room. So you could die, literally that's a triage. I mean, for me, it's shocking that we don't have that. Like that's the most logical triage. I mean, people coming in there, everybody in the waiting room's got a mental health issue on that moment. Like 100% everybody in that room, even especially the kids or the spouse, right? Or the children or the parents. Like that's a mental health crisis right there. Everybody in that room needs some kind of advice in that moment. And definitely a lot of patients are in there who probably end up being sent home because there's nothing physically wrong with them.
Right.
Wow.
And that happens all the time. I mean, think about it, people think they're having a heart attack. They're having a panic attack, right?
Yes.
They have severe stomach issues, but they've got severe anxiety, but nobody's ever really.
But it's nothing to do with the stomach.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's so many, there's just so many things that you could go to the ER for that they need those professionals. So
you said something earlier, and it was kind of made me think of a question where you're talking about people who are treatment resistant and they end up finding help with ketamine and the TDS.
TMS.
It's TMS, sorry, transmit.
Cranial magnetic stimulation. Say that 5 times fast.
I couldn't even get it out once. I mean, why not start people off with that kind of,
I mean, that is a great question. And it's actually, it's one of the things that people are advocating for now today. I think it's actually insurance companies have lowered their standards of, what the requirements are. The requirements for TMS used to be astronomical. You had to try a very significant amount of therapy. You had to try 6 to 10 medications first. And it's really loosening the reins. There is a lot of research on what you try, like the first modality. If you try meds, it will lower your chances of the next thing you try by 1/3. So to work. So your chances of something working go down by 1/3 every time you try a new modality. So it's called the STAR-D study. You can look it up. It's very interesting. especially with adolescents, which is something that we're still, looking for coverage on for TMS. It's a very safe treatment.
Yeah.
But it isn't FDA approved technically for adolescents quite yet, but neither are most of the psych meds, right? Like your basic psych meds are, the FDA approval is for 18 plus, but now insurance is starting to recognize, those things as needed care. Hopefully we'll get that with TMS. But I mean, I will tell you, the earlier on in your crisis stage that you try TMS or try Spravato, the better off you'll be permanently and long term. I mean, if we can get to people at the very beginning stages of their mental health journey, the chances of them getting better, staying better, the sustainability of those treatments are, it's such a big difference.
The data I've seen on it is it's
amazing.
Yeah, and if once you understand what's happening in the brain, the physical stuff that's going on, and you understand, how you build these tracks and you just keep running down the same sort of negative conversations, right? And you're building it, you can't drive out of a rut in a four-wheel drive truck, so your brain is, you can't help yourself. And you could sit on a couch for 10 years. It's just going to make it worse because you're just you're reliving that experience. So you're driving through the same trough again and again with the therapy.
That's a great analogy. Actually, I really like that. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the younger the patient is and the earlier on in their mental health journey or diagnosis that we can get to them, the better it is, the better that they get. And the durability is huge when it comes to that. It really works. So it'd be great if we can offer this as a first line of defense. But realistically, there's FDA coverage and all of those things that we have to worry about. So
yeah, it's just going to take time for the machinery to catch up to the data.
Yeah,
I have a feeling, and then the advocacy, and then there'll be some turf fights. I'm sure there'll be some turf wars in there somewhere. I mean, it's the beautiful part about the crisis is there's a lot of attention, but unfortunately sometimes with attention comes a lot of money, and then comes the bad guys, and then everybody's fighting over the dollars, and we lose sight of the patient somewhere in that conversation. Sometimes, not always.
And I think that something that is interesting about the field of psychiatry, the field of mental health, is most of the professionals have gone through their schooling without these modalities at their disposal, right? So TMS is somewhat new. It has pretty recent FDA approvals. And it's just been covered by insurance for maybe 9 years. So you think about it, like psychiatrists didn't learn this in med school.
No.
Therapists don't know about it. And even with the ketamine and the Spravato, and, these are new things that there's this kind of a skepticism, and psychiatry has been very much, write medications, do therapy, and send them on their way. And that's been their only method. ECT, electric shock therapy, basically is, that was one thing that they had it there.
I interviewed somebody that had it, and I was like, wait, what? They're still shocking people?
Oh, I mean, you would be surprised at how often people are still getting that treatment. But that was the only thing that was outside of medication and therapy.
Yeah, they said he was treatment resistant. And so,
it was the only thing that was offered. But, TMS has similar efficacy to it, but it doesn't, require anesthesia. It's not going to cause memory loss. It's not going to require a hospitalization. There's a lot of negative side effects that come with something like ECT. It works for a lot of people, but what's the trade-off sometimes? And I think that being able to be introduced to TMS is really cool because you don't have those side effects. You don't have to go to a hospital. You drive yourself to an appointment. You sit here for 20 minutes and talk to a really awesome person for 20 minutes while, they have this tapping, you put a helmet on. people love coming here. I mean, they have a great experience. They never want to leave, which is hilarious to me. Like they just become friends with our technicians, and then they become part of our family in a way. And we've had so many patients that have come through this door that maybe did ECT that had zero success with it because there were just too many side effects from it.
Yeah.
And they come in here and they do TMS and they're going to work again. They're getting dressed and they're getting off the couch and they're going to school. Oh my gosh, we've had so many younger people that maybe were totally stuck, that couldn't get through their day at school, or just couldn't go to school. They were paralyzed and they did TMS and now they're like off at college and
that's wild,
doing some great things, contributing to society. I mean, wow. Who would
imagine just being disabled from your mental health, right? And actually it's not even a mental health, it's a physical problem almost that you're healing, right? Because TMS is actually physically repairing the brain.
Yeah, it is. It's creating and repairing neural pathways in your brain, and that's a big deal. So
it's like surgery without the knife in a way.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's a really innovative procedure that's offered in psychiatry today, which is really cool. And it primarily treats depression, but it's also FDA approved for OCD. It has some efficacy in a lot of off-label things, dementia, bipolar. It has an FDA approval for anxious depression. It has an FDA approval for smoking, which is also cool because it's the first addiction modality that's offered in that sense. But
what about epilepsy?
I haven't seen it used for epilepsy. And I don't
think of, like Alzheimer's, anything where you've got brain, degradation, or, it's just not firing correctly.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on anything neurological, being able to be treated with TMS, but it's not FDA approved yet. So, but we have done some off-label stuff with patients that have dementia or Alzheimer's, or even patients with MS. There's a lot of research on Parkinson's.
I would imagine there's a lot of research going on.
Yeah, there's a ton of research still. And we use a machine. The medical device we use is called Brainsway, which is a really cool company because they're constantly doing research and they're looking at new modalities and new ways to treat patients. They really have a leg up in the research. So there's a lot of medical devices that we could choose from, but this company is really, the gold standard when it comes to TMS.
I'm going to say I interviewed somebody from there, or somebody that used the product.
Oh yeah. I mean, you should, if you haven't, you should find.
Yeah, something. I should. Yeah. I want to say I interviewed somebody from the company, but I can't. I've already got 100. I already have 100 shows done. And sometimes it takes a minute. I know the company though.
It's a great company. I mean, they really are investing in research and getting people better. And they're very dedicated to getting their product to do as many possible things as they can. So very cool.
I think I'm chasing them. I think that's what it is that I think it was another podcast. Somebody's using their product in their facility. And I think
really?
I think I'm chasing. I think I've got some emails out to some of the people. Yeah.
Well, let me know. I can make an intro to you.
Okay.
You.
Oh, good. That'd be good. That question of why don't we start with things that we know have a 90%? I mean, if something's 90% effective on people who are the 10% fail of the system, logically, you start them all, you start everybody off with that and throw everybody else to the traditional therapy. But I think, like you said, it would take a long time for people to get their head around the change, because it's flipping the whole funnel, the whole process, the whole treatment funnel upside down.
And it's educating patients and clinicians too, right? I mean, if you've never had mental health treatment before, how would you know? Right? And it's not like they're on TV talking about like, are you depressed? Uh, and they're not. I mean,
it's sad, but no, we don't have those conversations.
no. So, I mean, it's really getting it out there, and what you're doing is really cool because you're telling people about these things that exist, which it again, it's that accessibility piece, right? You know, if
Yeah.
you've never dealt with
Yes.
mental health issues, how do you navigate them?
Yeah, and the stigma of just, getting out and talking about it, we're talking about it. And I think therapists, it was a mystical practice for men. For me, a therapist was a mystical thing, right?
Mhm.
Somebody with, a beard and, smoking a pipe,
Like a
sitting on,
wizard.
yeah, sitting with a, I had my instant recognition is so archaic. It's like I
Right.
have an 1880s perception of what a therapist looks like. And, and obviously it's obviously drastically changed,
Right.
but that's, I think culturally, that's still probably a lot of the culture, at least within the old school system. There must be a real strong DNA of culture inside the field.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely think people are more open to understanding therapy, right? Understanding
Mhm.
the mental health field and more open to diving in and getting treatment than they used to be.
You mean, yeah, the general public. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. Like
Come a long way.
it's come a long way. It
Yeah.
had such a huge stigma around it for so long, and I think it still does for sure. But maybe with the pandemic, people are a little bit more open to talking about
Mm.
mental health
And the younger generation, your kids, I mean, the college kids, I think anybody 30-ish
Mhm,
and under is very comfortable talking about how
mhm.
they're feeling, what their emotional mental state is, how what their confidence level is, just their own mental well-being.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. I mean, everybody I've interviewed with the jar that's been younger mental health is part of the conversation.
Mhm.
So it's really, there's a lot of hope there. I mean, the younger generation's really way more in touch and way more open,
Oh,
and
for sure.
there's no shame in it. And they check on each other, which
Mhm.
is also very interesting. You know,
Yeah.
they are more sensitive to other people's feelings and what they're going through, which you can really appreciate, as opposed to, the psychotic craziness culture of corporate culture that I was used to.
Right.
Where if you saw any weakness, you took advantage of it.
Isn't that true? But, I mean, I think even some of the, the older population now has
Yeah.
sought refuge in mental health treatment at this
Yeah.
point, and we saw a lot of that over the pandemic. That was an interesting it was an interesting thing to witness because a lot of people that were maybe alone, maybe they were a widow and
Mm,
they lived alone and they were struggling and they didn't see any people, they would have some sort of refuge in that.
absolutely. Yeah. You go alone long enough, you go crazy.
Mhm.
It's like really crazy. Like you can really go get inside your head too deep. It's not a good place to be alone with the fear porn that we were running. I mean, we had a 24/7 um, fear being spread
Mhm.
into the general population. So if you're older and alone, it'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, it must be one of the joys of the business. I mean, there's got to be a lot of joys. Um, but one has got to be seeing somebody come in, never had treatment, comes in, and you just change somebody's life. This has got to be the most, in some ways, really a rewarding business.
Oh, 100%. It's pretty unbelievable to watch somebody's life change. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had I I could sit here and talk about some of the stories
Yeah.
of these
Yeah.
people forever, because it's remarkable how much people's lives have changed. There's people that have and the most remarkable stories are the ones that they've tried everything, right?
Yeah.
We have people that have tried everything, literally hospitalization after hospitalization.
Oh man.
They're on disability because they can't work
Yes,
anymore
can't function.
or they have such bad OCD. They can't function at all. And they come in and maybe they start with TMS, or maybe they're doing Spravato. Maybe they do both. And their lives are literally changed. We've seen people that have been isolated for years that go off and get a job, get married. I mean, go away to college. Those are the stories that make you want to do this job every day. I mean, no matter how much stress, running a business would be, to hear these stories, and it's just incredible.
Susan, we're right about that time. Really awesome. I mean, I can't talk about somebody doing some really good for humanity. You're running a business, and like you said, all the stress and everything else associated with it. And sure, you're trying to earn some, to build a business for your family and build something, but you're also doing incredibly powerful work.
Thank you.
More power to you. And boy, it'd be great to see 20 offices open up.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal for sure.
Yeah. And, think you're doing twice a month, right? You're finding all those people in all the corners, of the country coming out of their closets, right? Who have been, like you said, they're at the end of the rope, right? Drugs don't work. Nothing works. The hospitalization sounds so desperate. And to be able to come out of that and find some hope is powerful stuff. How about any kind of a closing message for the world, or for maybe a patient listening, or maybe a practitioner listening that's looking for, I'll kind of leave it up to you.
And I think it's really important to do your research, right? Know that there is something out there for everybody, and that stuff does exist, that maybe, I would say to clinicians or to therapists and people that don't believe or don't understand this, do the research, learn about it, because it could save somebody's life. And that's really the message that's so important.
Yeah. I mean, that's the scoreboard we've got, right? Being in this, being in the space right now, it's a brutal scoreboard, which is the suicides per day, right? The rate of suicide, and there's no running, no hiding from that number.
No.
Yeah.
But if everybody knew that there were so many options now, maybe we can keep that.
Yeah, you'd have a big impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have a big impact.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, thanks so much for being a guest.
Thanks,
I think and great what you're doing. Like I said, what you're doing with the clinic and the services is fantastic. And I love your branding is really good. Your team looks really good. I go through and research the website. You guys got everything going on right now. And it's just how many, like I said, how fast can you grow, and how fast can you help more people tomorrow? Really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for what you do.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being a guest. And big shout out to everybody still listening. If you're listening to this on the recorded episode, thanks very much. Drop down to whatever app you're listening on and give us a review, little comments, and probably more importantly is to share. Because like Susan and I talked about, awareness of mental health and people being able to find solutions, not just talk therapy, but there's a lot of different ways to get help. And we hope we can highlight some of those. Susan, thanks again. Hang around. I'll see you on the other side in 30 seconds.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, loose, baby.
We're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals at Public Glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glassblowing. Yeah, we're going to go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.